Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on PRConnectionRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. So, the NHL trade deadline, it's always an exciting time to see what your favorite team does at the NHL trade deadline. And here for our Vegas Golden Knights, it is no exception. And with the injury to our captain, Mark Stone, that frees up a good amount of money that the Vegas Golden Knights could use for said NHL trade deadline. And as a matter of fact, the current situation the Vegas Golden Knights have before the Mark Stone situation, they only had $1.1 million in current cap space. But because Mark Stone is on long term IR, when they do put him on there because of his back surgery, Mark Stone will have to have that 9.5 million will be transferred over to long term IR. So because the Vegas Golden Knights have options now, it has gotten your host Ian Rachiele interested. I am intrigued to see how the Vegas Golden Knights do at the trade deadline. And more importantly, I want to see how the Vegas Golden Knights do when they go up and they try to fix their most glaring weakness. The most glaring weakness that your Vegas Golden Knights have is depth at the forward position. More importantly, they have a weakness when it comes to how lack of depth they have on their bottom six. It has been well known the Vegas Golden Knights do not have a strong bottom six. Their top line, when everyone's there, is incredible. The second line with Marchessault, Carlson, and Smith have been phenomenal together in 6 seasons. But bottom six has always been a question mark with your Vegas Golden Knights. So, here on tonight's episode of Vegas Hockey Hub, your host Ian Rachiele, I'm going to give you not one, not two, not three, not four, but five possible forwards the Vegas Golden Knights could acquire at the NHL trade deadline 2023. And I will give you a reason for why they would do it, and I'm going to give you a reason for why Vegas wouldn't do it. So to start this off at number 5, and I have him on my screen, so it gave a little bit away, I'm going to go with Arizona Coyotes forward Nick Bjugstad. So Nick Bjugstad is a fascinating case because of who he is. So the Arizona Coyotes, Nick Bjugstad, is currently on the second line. He's a second line center for the Arizona Coyotes. This season, as a middle six forward in Arizona, he has had 11 goals, 21 points, a +8 in 51 games for Arizona. Now, Nick Bjugstad, the former 2010 first round pick by the Florida Panthers, a guy who has been a longtime stalwart in the NHL. Now, Nick Bjugstad, the one positive I would give, and him being a veteran, I will say is a positive to Vegas, is the amount of games Nick Bjugstad has played throughout his career. He has established more than 600 NHL games in his career. This is the same Nick Bjugstad who's been in Florida, been in Pittsburgh, Minnesota, now Arizona. So he has had a lot of value to 4 teams that he has played with. I also want to keep in mind that he has been in the playoffs in Florida, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota. So he has provided playoff experience and value in terms of production as a member of Pittsburgh, Florida, and Minnesota. As a matter of fact, Nick Bjugstad was part of the Minnesota Wild team that took on the Vegas Golden Knights in round 1 in the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. He was part of that team. Now, I want to keep in mind the best season that Nick Bjugstad's had in his career was a 49-point performance in 2017-2018 in Florida. He has also had some stellar years with Florida. There was one year that he had 22 assists in one single year. That was his highest mark. And when it comes to the playoffs, he's had 5 points in 15 games. So Nick Bjugstad provides that value to a bottom six line. I also want to mention how cheap it would be for the Vegas Golden Knights. Nick Bjugstad only on a $900,000 deal in Arizona. So this past off season, Nick Bjugstad, he had signed that 1 year deal, $900,000 to play in Arizona, taking kind of a 1 year flyer with Arizona after taking another 1 year deal that he did with the Minnesota Wild back in 2021. So Nick Bjugstad is someone that I could say positively your Vegas Golden Knights could put on a bottom six and you could get some value out of him. Now, would I say that you probably would have to give up something on the defensive end? Would you have to give up maybe a prospect, maybe a mid-round pick to get Nick Bjugstad? Most likely. But I believe that under the right circumstances, the Vegas Golden Knights, you have your first round pick this year, first round pick next year, first round pick the year after that. I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights, they do have majority of their draft capital. They've only had to give off maybe two or three picks in upcoming trades. So at number 5 for the Arizona Coyotes, forward Nick Bjugstad is someone that I would say could be an interesting partner for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now at number 4, we're going to go up to Calgary because the Calgary Flames do have a player who is a little bit on the young side and would provide value to the Vegas Golden Knights if they actually had him play for Vegas. At number 4, I have Dylan Dubé from the Calgary Flames. So Dylan Dubé currently right now in Calgary, he is on their first line for the Calgary Flames, 24 years old. He will be a restricted free agent in 2024. He has a $2.3 million cap hit. Keep in mind that the Calgary Flames drafted him in the second round of the 2016 NHL draft. He has been a member of the Calgary Flames ever since he got drafted, and his current performance as a Calgary Flame, 12 goals, 27 points, a -1 in 51 games in 2022, 2023. So for Dylan Dubé, the British Columbia born Dylan Dubé, so ever since he has been with the Calgary Flames, he signed that $2.3 million deal back in 2021. It was a 3 year deal signed at the time. Now, his statistics in Calgary, 5 seasons in, he has played 250 games, 48 goals, 102 points, and he's actually gotten around 90 penalty minutes in his career. There's also the same Dylan Dubé who has played 22 playoff games in his career, racking up 4 goals in 22 playoff games. So not only does Dylan Dubé have playoff experience, but at only 24 years old, he actually would have some form of contract retention for the Vegas Golden Knights. So the one positive to him is his age, is the fact that at 24 years old, he would be bringing some young value to the Vegas Golden Knights. And him having 250 NHL games in his career, he would be kind of an established young player on the Vegas Golden Knights roster. He also would be a much needed value to the middle six with the Vegas Golden Knights. The majority of these trades I'm going to be talking about is going to be addressing the middle six of the Vegas Golden Knights. Because if you strengthen the middle six, it will actually help the bottom six because you're going to have to send people down from the second line to third line down to fourth line, and vice versa. So the one positive to Dylan Dubé is the fact that he's a young, established player in the NHL. The one negative, however, is going to be the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights are most likely going to have to give up somebody worth of value in a Dylan Dubé trade. If the Calgary Flames get rid of someone who has a value like that, someone who's a restricted free agent at 24 years old, the Vegas Golden Knights would have to give up a young prospect. They would have to give up a young person that has upside to the Calgary Flames. Now, that could be their number 1 prospect, Brendan Brisson. Could be their number 2 prospect, Lucas Cormier. Or maybe their number 3 prospect in Caden Korczak. But whichever one it is, I would not be surprised if they did make a move on here. The only negative I could see is Vegas would have to give up a young but very highly touted prospect, or would have to give up a first and or second round pick to Calgary, who's in their division, in order to make this trade. Now, I know you are asking, where are they getting the cap money? Well, I actually explained in the beginning of the show that thanks to Mark Stone and his $9.5 million being put on long term IR, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have $10.6 million in cap space. So the Vegas Golden Knights, they can make two or three small moves, or as I'm going to talk about later in this episode, they can make a big move that would cost around that 10.6 million in cap space. So at number 5, we had Nick Bjugstad from the Arizona Coyotes. The positive was that he is cheap and he has provided playoff experience before. The negative is that he would be a rental, so you'd only have him for 20 games. The positive for Dylan Dubé here at number 4 is that he is a young 24-year-old who has already 250 games in, and as a bonus, would be a restricted free agent in 2024. So it wouldn't just be a rental; you would have him for a year and a half. The negative is that Calgary's in the same division, and you, in order to get that 24-year-old young established player, you would have to give up a good value player and or good value pick to get Dylan Dubé. So as we're talking about 5 forwards that the Golden Knights could acquire, once again, I have Nick Bjugstad from the Arizona Coyotes at number 5. At number 4, Calgary Flames, Dylan Dubé. And now it is time to discuss the Carolina Hurricanes and Teuvo Teravainen. Now, I know a lot about Teuvo Teravainen because he was a former Chicago Blackhawk. I mean, Teuvo was someone who was a young guy on the Chicago Blackhawks during their Stanley Cup run. During their 2010, 2013, 2015 Stanley Cup run, Teuvo Teravainen, he was a young, up-and-coming 19, 20-year-old with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, a few years later, the 28-year-old winger from the Carolina Hurricanes, he is an established veteran at this point in time. So the positive to getting Teuvo is he provides playoff value to the Vegas Golden Knights. Teuvo Teravainen has played in well over 70 playoff games in his career. He's also the same Teuvo who has had 20 playoff goals, over 40 playoff points in his career. He also had playoff games, like I said, in Chicago and now in Carolina. He's also the same Teuvo that has had 76 points with Carolina in 2018, 2019, and this past season in 2021 had a 22 goal, 65-point performance in Carolina. Now, the only two negatives I could find about Teuvo Teravainen is one, his no trade clause that he has in his contract. That's right. Teuvo has a no trade clause, which is a 10-team no trade list for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, we do not know who's on a player's no trade list. They don't make that openly available to the public. So if the Vegas Golden Knights are on a no trade list, then this is a no go. But let's just say, for the sake of the argument, the Vegas Golden Knights are not on a no trade list, and he is willing to come to Las Vegas. Well, that is then averted. The other negative, though, is his cap hit. Now, Teuvo has a $5.4 million cap hit for this remaining year and next year as well. So he wouldn't be a rental in this situation. He would be on a 1.5-year deal, and you would have to pay him $5.4 million in terms of cap hit and $5.875 in total salary. So the Vegas Golden Knights might not want to do a deal like this, simply for the fact that when it comes to a player like Teuvo Teravainen, despite the playoff experience, Despite the 65 to 70 point games seasons that he's had, he has a no trade clause and he has a $5.4 million cap hit. So there's a possibility the Vegas Golden Knights do not want to pay him 5.4 million next year, and the possibility of him being on a no trade list, which would be a no go from the start conversation. But besides that, having Teuvo Teravainen would be fantastic for the middle six. I mean, after all, the Carolina Hurricanes on their current roster, same roster that has Max Pacioretty on it, same roster that has Dylan Coghlan on it, and Paul Stastny. Why am I just naming former Golden Knights players? I do not know. But Tevou's on the first line right now in Carolina with Sebastian Aho and with Seth Jarvis. So that's number 3. So Teuvo is 3, Dylan Dubé is 4, and Nick Bjugstad is 5. Now at number 2 is the big fish. As we're talking about 5 forwards that the Golden Knights could acquire at the NHL trade deadline here on Vegas Hockey Hub, here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. Now at number 2, this guy has been in so many headlines, so many conversations that I can't pass it up. He is not practicing with the team. He has actually not been doing much with the team, actually evaluating what his future is like with Chicago Blackhawks. And yes, I will say from a Chicago Blackhawks fan perspective, you obviously would not want to see Patrick Kane go. This is a guy who has scored over 1,200 points in his career, all of them with Chicago Blackhawks. This is the same Patrick Kane who has been a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, all in Chicago. This is somebody who has had Game 7 moments in Chicago. Patrick Kane, it doesn't matter if he gets traded this offseason or not. Patrick Kane will be a Chicago legend regardless of what happens at the trade deadline. But since the Chicago Blackhawks are tanking for Connor Bedard, I'm sorry, I'm just calling how it is. With the Chicago Blackhawks tanking for the number 1 pick, trying to get Connor Bedard, and Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane being on a final year of their contract, it's going to be an end of an era. Now, I'm going to kind of point out the obvious here. Why don't I include Jonathan Toews as well? If I'm talking about forwards that they could acquire, why would I just mention Patrick Kane and not Jonathan Toews? Well, I have 2 reasons. Well, first off, Jonathan Toews being the captain of the Chicago Blackhawks, he is someone who is most likely not going to be moved first out of the 2. Jonathan Toews being the captain, Jonathan Toews being the number 1 overall pick back in 2007. I mean, this is a situation where Jonathan Toews has been the face of the franchise, a leader in the locker room, and it's also a situation where Jonathan Toews having that no movement clause, he is somebody that is going to want to stay in Chicago unless there comes an offer that I don't think that they will turn down. But once again, Jonathan Toews will have to make it official because of a no movement clause. So with Patrick Kane, as we're talking about him at number 2, might as well just discuss it now. When it comes to Patrick Kane, there's 2 obvious positives that you have to look at with Patrick Kane. 2 positives that Chicago Blackhawks and really the Vegas Golden Knights would be talking about. The number 1 positive about Patrick Kane is his playoff experience. 140 playoff games in his career, 52 playoff goals, 130 put playoff points. Patrick Kane, despite the fact that our last playoff appearance was in 2020, ironically, they lost in the first round to the Vegas Golden Knights. But Patrick Kane, even in that playoff series, if he was in 2020, he had 2 goals, 7 assists for 9 points in 9 playoff games. So Patrick Kane, even in a first round exit to the Vegas Golden Knights in the 2020 bubble averaged a point per game as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. It's also the same Patrick Kane that not even a year ago in 2021, 2022 had 26 goals, 92 points in 78 games. And he has had 35 points this year in 46 games. So with Patrick Kane, I will say that he is positive is the amount of playoff experience. There really is nobody at the trade deadline that has as near playoff experience as Patrick Kane does. The other positive to Patrick Kane is that he is a rental. A positive to Patrick Kane is the fact that he is going to be a 20 to 25 game player for the Vegas Golden Knights. He will have to play the remaining of the regular season, and if they have Patrick Kane on the roster, get into the first round, and they'll take on a team like Edmonton or go up against a team like LA. So that's a second positive. Now, the two negatives to Patrick Kane coming here. The two negatives that I could find about Patrick Kane is one, his no movement clause. Patrick Kane having a no movement clause pretty much dictates that he has to waive his no movement clause to come here. Just like in all the rumors and all the selected moves that are coming around on all the dirt sheets, Patrick Kane has to choose Vegas in a trade. This is not the Chicago Blackhawks. They can't just willingly trade Patrick Kane to Vegas. No, Patrick Kane would have to choose the Golden Knights as a trade partner. And that could be a bit tricky because understand the Vegas Golden Knights, and this is just being completely honest. The Vegas Golden Knights executives and their front office really haven't made a good relationship with the Players Association. The Vegas Golden Knights aren't really been in high praise for the moves they have made the past 4 or 5 years. Yeah, with the Chicago Blackhawks, are you kidding me? Are you surprised that the Chicago Blackhawks and the Vegas Golden Knights, that relationship they have? Do I need to remind you the last two trades the Vegas Golden Knights and Chicago Blackhawks have made together? The last trade they made was Marc-Andre Fleury going to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for prospect Mikael Häkkinen, who never even played for Vegas, by the way. It was a prospect that never even played. And the second trade they made before that was when the Vegas Golden Knights acquired Robin Lehner in a 3-team deal back in the 2020 NHL trade deadline. So the last two trades the Chicago Blackhawks have made with the Vegas Golden Knights, it has been an eventful one. It has been an important one. It has been an impact one. And yes, I'm not including Matthias Janmark, by the way, because I understand what happened there too. So with the Vegas Golden Knights, they have a track record of trading with Chicago Blackhawks. But unlike those trades, Patrick Kane has a no movement clause. He would have to pick coming here. The second negative also, with him having a $10.5 million cap hit, the Vegas Golden Knights would have to trade somebody of insane value to the Chicago Blackhawks in return. This wouldn't just be a 5th round pick and a mid-level prospect. All right, this wouldn't just be a 2nd round pick and maybe your number 2 prospect, Lucas Cormier. No, this would be if you're gonna give us Patrick Kane, all right, we need in return a 1st round pick this year, your number 1 prospect, Brendan Bryson, and we need help when it comes to making the deal work in terms of money. So you're going to give us somebody that we want in value in return. We want a young guy. We want somebody that we can get back that's going to be part of the team for a couple of years. In other words, this would be very similar to what the Bo Horvat situation was with the Vancouver Canucks and the New York Islanders, where Bo Horvat was a rental and the Vancouver Canucks got a massive overpayment in Anthony Bouvier, Aturata, and a first round pick. They got in a well established top six forward, a top prospect, and a first round pick. So I would not be surprised if that's what has to happen here as well, which would kind of be a negative to the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't think they would want to give up that much for someone like Patrick Kane. However, as a Vegas Golden Knights fan, as somebody who's been watching this team long enough, I can tell you that this team has done a lot of things lately that has been considered crazy. So, number 2 is Patrick Kane. Number 3 was Teuvo Teravainen from the Carolina Hurricanes, former Chicago Blackhawk. Number 4 would be Dylan Dubé from the Calgary Flames. And at number 5 would be Nick Bjugstad from the Arizona Coyotes. But the number 1 forward that your Vegas Golden Knights could acquire at the NHL trade deadline, someone I believe will provide insane value to the Vegas Golden Knights, we have from the Detroit Red Wings, Tyler Bertuzzi. And the reason why I say Tyler Bertuzzi would be an excellent pickup for the Vegas Golden Knights is that he has 3 positives and only 1 negative to him. So the first positive to Tyler Bertuzzi is the fact that he has some toughness. He shows some gritty. He is someone at 27 years of age. He is someone that you could put on your middle six here in Vegas, and you know that you are going to get an insane amount of value from Tyler Bertuzzi. I also want to mention that this is the same Tyler Bertuzzi that's similar to his dad, Todd Bertuzzi. He is someone that with the Detroit Red Wings had a 62-point performance in 68 games in 2021-2022. He has also played over 300 NHL games, 86 goals, 194 points, and he has racked up near 170 penalty minutes in his career. The second positive to Tyler Bertuzzi is that he is a rental. He would be, at the end of the year, a free agent. So you would only be getting Tyler Bertuzzi for 20 to 25 games, considering how far you go in the playoffs. And lastly, the main reason why the Golden Knights would want Tyler Bertuzzi is the fact that you'll have to give up a first round pick. Maybe you'll have to give up, a number 2 prospect, number 3 prospect. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Tyler Bertuzzi, the one main positive that I can take away from it is that he provides value to the one weakness the Vegas Golden Knights have. And that is finding someone who could be a replacement in that middle six. Because with Mark Stone being injured, you had to have Jonathan Marchessault be on the first line with Jack Eichel and with Paul Cotter or Chandler Stevenson, depending on who they put on the first line. When you get Bertuzzi, he would be a guy you would put on the second line. You could team him up with Riley Smith, William Karlsson. You can move the lines around, have him be alongside, Phil Kessel, and have him alongside Chandler Stevenson, Michael Amadio, Paul Cotter. There's a lot of combinations you could do if you have Tyler Bertuzzi on the Vegas Golden Knights. That only negative that I mentioned earlier about Tyler Bertuzzi is that he has had no playoff experience in his career. So if you acquire him, this will be the first time in his career he will be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I know the Vegas Golden Knights are going to want to acquire somebody that has some playoff experience, that has some, I've been there, done that type of mentality. But you let me know in the chat down below. You let me know in the comment section. Out of these 5 forwards, who do you want the Vegas Golden Knights to acquire? Once again, number 1, Tyler Bertuzzi from the Detroit Red Wings. Number 2, Patrick Kane from the Chicago Blackhawks. Number 3, Teuvo Teravainen from the Carolina Hurricanes. Number 4, Dylan Dubé from the Calgary Flames. And number 5, Nick Bjugstad from the Arizona Coyotes. So until next time, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. We have another episode planned for you. And so stay tuned for that one. Until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights. Go.